Loren.
Hey, Kelsey.
Campus Confidential.
It's here. Can you believe it?
Barely. How about you?
I'm excited, a little nervous, really happy to be here with you.
Same. I'm a little overwhelmed and thrilled that we're actually doing this.
I think it's going to be fun.
I hope it's going to be fun. I also think, can you believe all of our conversations over tea and coffee in Ann Arbor, Michigan brought us here?
It got real fast. Yeah, I can believe it because I know you like action and you weren't just theorizing that you'd like to do a podcast. Now I know that's real.
Thanks for jumping on the train with me. Let's do this. So, Loren, why do you want to do this podcast?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question because really, let's acknowledge that this was your idea, and I'm grateful you asked me to do it with you. And I thought it might be worth telling the story about how this came to be a little bit over coffee at Sweetwater's.
In Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Yeah. Tell that story.
In Carytown.
Why did this? Because you came up with this idea, and I'm grateful you did. Talk about that a little bit.
For me, podcasts or the idea of podcasts is something I listen to regularly, and I have thought about in the back of my head of what would a podcast topic look like? What would we do? How would we do it? When I say we, I'm talking about me. For some reason, I need to collectively bring other people along with me. But I think as you and I had time to sit down and talk and we really think about higher ed and we think about what's happening in higher education, I just keep coming back to the people and where the people have been, what we've been throughout the career, my career, 20-some years in higher ed, your career, 30-some years in higher ed. We're really at this time where people seem disconnected, yet passionate about the work. And so is there a way that people like us who spent time on college campuses, who still very much believe in higher education, how can we help the people doing the work? And so as we continue to talk about it, it's like, well, what if we did a podcast just about the people, how they're doing, where they're at, where they hope to go, what they're looking for in the future? I think that's where we started. And then we started doing research, right? We started looking at what exists, what's out there. I think that's where your skills really came to the table.
You said two things to me in that coffee I wrote down. One was, so tell me if this rings a bell, and let's see if I can understand more about what you were getting at. But you said you want people to know they're not alone. And the other thing you said was, I want to bring the heart back to higher ed. Do you remember saying that?
I do.
What did you mean by bring the heart back, do you think? I mean, what was your thinking then?
No one works in higher education to get rich. The work is done because you believe in the product. If we really boil it down, the product of higher education are students educating people in a variety of ways. Yes, they have the classroom, the textbooks, etc., but outside of the classroom, especially in a residential experience, how students learn and grow, develop their social skills, their human skills, is something that I believe the people that are successful in higher ed have the heart to do. And I think the pandemic, variety of things of life have really taken it. Do we have the heart to continue to do this work?
Yeah. So when we were having that conversation and you asked me if I'd be interested in doing this with you, I was frightened. I thought, oh my gosh, this has to be different than other podcasts. What motivated me was, in many ways, the news that we read in the Chronicle or the popular media is so negative. I mean, but it's not entirely untrue. Higher education is unbelievably challenged right now, right? Maybe even dysfunctional in some ways. So can we acknowledge that there may be truth in that, but it's not entirely broken, that there are really powerful figures, important things to be done, great contributions that higher education makes. The stories I hope we can uncover because there are really influential and wise people doing really important things that make me better, us better, students better, communities better. So my hope here, when you were talking about bring the heart back and people aren't alone, is that we can help uncover the stories, the people, the sort of things that don't make it into that news that is so negative. I think all the time, unfortunately. So, I think that this is a really pivotal time for higher education. I think that we were, you gathered these folks in Washington a few weeks back, right? And somebody said, does higher education have to implode to reform? Which to me was a really fascinating kind of question. So I'm hoping we can actually kind of explore the real dysfunctions and problems in higher education, at the same time celebrate what's working well too. So that's my hope, and I'm excited about doing this with you.
Yeah. I'm excited too. I'm glad you said yes.
Yes, me too.
Even though you were frightened,
yeah,
terrified?
frightened and terrified to. Yeah, and I think that's the other reason, honestly, Kelsey, I wanted to do this. I think things that make you a little nervous are good. I grow the most when I'm anxious about, can I do it? You were talking earlier about the rim-to-rim hike in the Grand Canyon. I don't know how you felt about that, but the things that push you a little bit are good. So part of the reason I said yes is, A, it's you, B, it's something I care about, and C, it's a little frightening. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I love that. I just live in a land of delusion. Like, I think I can do everything till I'm right up to the time. Then I'm like, holy crap, what did I say yes to?
Yep. Well, it's in the description of what we wrote. And I felt it, as we were developing that statement, like, this is hard. Higher ed is hard.
It is hard.
And so this ought to be a little bit hard too, I think. We're talking about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it takes some level of resiliency to keep coming back and doing the work. And you can read the articles and the news, and I'm hoping for a space that people can just show up as themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What have they done as an individual to contribute, to take care of themselves, to be resilient, to keep showing up?
So tell me about the job that you have, and actually the way I want to ask it, because I'm not sure I exactly know. I was going to ask you the Uber question. If I was your Uber driver, how would you explain your job to me and the ride we have from the airport to the office? Or Lyft. I'm not trying to pick just Uber.
I mean, we got to go with Lyft. Did you watch that?
No.
It was HBO?
No.
What was it? Showtime? Showmax.
If I was your shared ride driver, how about for a
shared ride driver, neutral?
Yeah. How would you? And then you can give me the long version.
I work to support higher education as an industry. And then people are like, what is that? What does it even mean? And then I say, I work for a company called Compass Group that predominantly focuses on food and facility services across the U.S. I specifically focus in higher education. And my role as an ambassador is to think about higher education as an industry. Where is it headed? What does it need? And what resources can a company like Compass Group really bring to the table to help higher education? If I'm being honest, that's the best answer I've ever given.
That's good.
Because to this point, I've been like, I don't know. I work for Compass Group. My title is ambassador, which I don't even really get.
Are there
So
other ambassadors for other lines of business in Compass Group?
There's another ambassador for K-12 right now. The idea would be there'd be one for healthcare, community living, I think business and industry at some point. So trying to be targeted.
It sounds benevolently committed on the part of Compass Group to these industries in a way that says you don't have to supervise accounts. We're not trying to get profit margins up in we want to actually make a commitment to these particular lines of business, these particular sectors of the economy. Am I being too lofty with what the company helps, what you might do in your role? And
I don't think you're too lofty. I think that's exactly spot on. I think it is a place and space where Compass can put their beliefs into action.
I
We
like that.
believe in the people we serve, the communities that we are a part of. We believe in the people that work for Compass,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to put resources behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really are going to grow and continue to grow, we need to think about this,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be intentional. And I think as much as my role is to go out into the higher ed community and be thinking about and talking about higher education as a whole and what the challenges are and where we can all show up together, my role is to come back to Compass Group and have conversations and say, this is what's
It's
happening.
really going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what they're really worried about.
Yeah. How did your career prepare you for this particular role? What you've done? How has it prepared you or not prepared you?
I think it's prepared me in all sorts of ways. Spending time. I'm going to go all the way back to being in my master's program where I sat there and everyone was talking about student development theory. I was like, but how do we make money to support the programs?
Yeah.
What's the business case to support the development of students and their experience on campus? And so I really think my mindset has always been this idea of corporate and higher education and how they need to work together to benefit the student experience holistically. And so as I moved throughout my career in student unions, event services, commercial partnerships, the conversations that I've always had with corporate partners has been around what does true partnership look like?
Yeah.
Versus
vending or, just sort of a transactional kind of.
Or transfer of risk.
Transfer of risk,
Like,
exactly.
I think that is the worst
Yeah.
worst thing out there. I have a problem I can't solve, so I'm going to hire a company to take on all of my risk.
Yeah.
And that is just not, and then I'm going to call it a partnership.
Yeah.
And then everyone doesn't understand why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I really think my role at NACIS, playing a role with universities and corporate partners at a larger level helped me see the differentiation between the way companies showed up and the way campuses showed up, what true partnership looked like. So when this role was developed and I started having conversations with Compass Group, I think I used the words, this might be my dream job. To the point where a month before I even knew about this job, I said to my husband, I kind of want a job that really just thinks about how corporations and higher ed can work together and make it better for students. He's like, that sounds really made up. And then in January, I started having conversations about an ambassador for higher ed.
Yeah.
And I was like, that made up job is real, honey.
That's awesome. And I have a similar experience. I mean, I was getting Entrepreneur magazine when I was working in student affairs. I mean, I just have always had this businessy kind of orientation to higher education, but love the diversity of higher education and that we're talking about mission-oriented, really public good kinds of things and revenue and profit and loss and those kinds of things. What I have found, and I wonder if you find this to be true, is people sort of have a in higher ed or out of higher ed, corporate or, the other, the people call it the dark side or, and I love the blurry, the kind of gray. The reason I read everything I can, I think, because I just love the diversity of ideas, the different ways you think about stuff. You might read something about, I don't know, the electric industry, and you wonder about, the transformation going on. Is there some application to higher education, right? So with business, it doesn't seem to me, at least has never felt to me like it's that black and white or that in or out, right? So I hope that in this role and with company, you can sort of keep the blurry alive because it's not that easy. It's not that reductionist. People want to simplify things so much. You have to be really public-oriented and mission-driven and really good at business, in higher education. You have to worry about enrollment and retention and persistence and graduation and learning. You have to graduate students and give them time to find themselves, right? So, I mean, I'm hoping in your role you really can help all of us hang on to the messiness that is development and education and business.
That's
if
right.
it's done well.
And the word that comes to mind listening to you give that overview is accepting.
Say more.
I think sometimes in higher ed, we like to be, your word, reductionist or judgmental, or come from a scarcity mindset
Mm-hmm.
versus an accepting abundance mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That there's enough to go around, and all of these things are needed to make the community of higher education successful.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're eating ourselves up internally, then of course the media and everyone else we're easy to attack.
Mm-hmm.
Versus coming together and accepting your priority is teaching and learning. My priority is to run the business of the campus. Your priority is health and well-being of our student community, whatever that may be. But these silos, instead of when they come together, they're magic. When they're apart, it's really hard.
Is it possible that the attacks on higher education are unwarranted and unfair, but also have elements of truth? And the way higher education feels about those attacks being uninformed also coincide with some dysfunction and being out of touch. I mean, is it possible that all of that is true?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Yeah. You've said in some of our conversations leading up to this that you feel very settled in this role in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about your role
Mm-hmm.
and why you feel so settled in it right now.
Yeah. Well, this is, first of all, I work for Workshop Architects, which is a really different kind of architecture firm. And I had the great privilege in my career of working with lots of architecture firms, doing lots of capital projects that were really all around community building and building experience and socializing people to each other and creating inclusive environments. And so this firm does that, but it's a little different. When I was at Michigan, we used to, my boss there, who I just think so highly of, used to say, we do student affairs like TJ Maxx. We're just a little different. And I think this firm is just a little different about how it approaches things. And the way that you were talking about Compass Group wanting to make a contribution and a commitment to higher education, that we have the audacity to believe that we can actually help institutions better serve students. We're not just building things, designing things. And it's the kind of firm that would hire a guy like me, which is a little unconventional to hire. I'm not an architect. I am involved in lots of aspects of the firm: strategy setting, yes, business development, thought leadership, project management, particularly when they're kind of gnarly political questions on a project, sort of navigating through how do we bring people together towards a common vision when we are also deling with academic or non-academic disciplines, with physical space, which feels like territory, with histories and identities, right? All of that stuff is messy. I love that stuff. And so when that's at play, I work on those things. And so I think the reason I feel settled is because it in the same way that I read everything, it allows me to almost in a qualitative research way, or maybe especially in a qualitative research way, try to understand a place. It's almost like ethnography. What is true about this particular place? What makes it special? How do people relate to each other? What do students need? How do we know that that's what students need? How do we make sure we don't form conclusions too quickly about the place? In fact, hold ourselves back from forming conclusions so that we can understand what makes it what it is, and how do we make sure then that what we design for a place is the manifestation of its values. That's really what I get to do. And so I just feel so settled because of the way this firm works, because of the willingness to hire a guy like me, which would probably not be a great fit for most other firms, and because the appreciation for that curiosity that really is kind of the value system of the firm. I also, if I'm being truly honest, after 32 years of being on campus, I love higher ed. You've heard me say I'm bullish on higher education. There are problems, but I'm not negative about it. But I also was feeling like it was time for a change. Lots of weekends problems to deal with, and the kinds of, truthfully, the kinds of problems that are, alcohol problems and behavior problems and political problems, and I just felt like there was a contribution. I was spending a lot of time on things like that, which is this is the territory. It's why this is hard. But I wanted to do more across higher education, more for higher education, more. I wanted to help institutions find their way through that stuff in a way that when you're responsible for it, it's harder to do. So I get a chance to do that, and I love it. And I probably couldn't have certainly done it as effectively, but maybe not done it even before. The time in the seat has helped me navigate and approach each campus and each project and each problem with a appreciation that it's hard and complex, and to be slow in forming conclusions, and to honor the complexities and honor the histories in a way that is a little more appreciative, I guess, because I've sort of been through that a little bit. I guess that's the way. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
So, Loren, what do you hope this podcast brings to the world?
Gosh. Well, I hope that the stories, I hope that the people that we have come across in our careers are elevated and highlighted. I think, again, most people don't know the good that is going on campuses, at universities, the way the people who work in higher education have chosen to do that despite the difficulties because of what they believe and in whom they believe. I hope that those stories, those people are elevated. And I hope that actually there are some surprises along the way, Kelsey. I am not exactly sure what we'll learn together, and I'm kind of excited about that discovery too. What do you hope happens? What do you want to get out of this? What do you hope occurs?
I hope that the stories of the people who have the heart to do the work are showcased in a way that just draws people in. There's so much time spent on student success and the bigger picture of the university that there's hundreds of thousands of people doing the work that matters on college campuses. And I hope that this podcast highlights them, rejuvenates them, and excites other people. And I really appreciate you for coming along this ride with me.
Well, I'm grateful you asked. I'm excited to do this podcast with you, especially because of who you are and the way you approach questions and people and leadership. And I think we're going to have fun.
For sure.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Insko and Jen Fisher, with your hosts, Kelsey Harmon Finn and Lauren Rollman.